Hi, everyone. My name is Bridget Arndell, and I'm a project manager at Community Nature Connection. I invite you all to introduce yourself in the chat box. Let us know your name, where you're joining us from today, and any affiliations you're a part of and would like to share with everyone here. As you introduce yourselves in the chat box, I'll introduce Community Nature Connection. Community Nature Connection is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to increase access to the outdoors for communities impacted by racial and socioeconomic and disability injustices by eliminating existing barriers through advocacy, community-centered programming, and workforce development. Today, we're watching the Native Plant Landscaping Maintenance, a beginner's guide with Antonio Sanchez. This webinar is brought to you as part of Community Nature Connections Training Institute, which offers training and certification programs that are aimed at increasing knowledge and skill building in outdoor related fields. Quick housekeeping note, any questions you have, please put them in the Q&A section and we'll get to those later in the session. So before we begin, please join me in acknowledging this land. We acknowledge the land on which Community Nature Connection operates as the ancestral land and home of the Tongva, the Tataviam, and the Chumash peoples, original stewards and custodians of this territory. We recognize their continuing connection to the land, to the waters, and to the cultures, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Thank you all for being here with us today. We have a packed room, which is really exciting. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to Antonio Sanchez from Santa Monica Mountains Fund, who will be leading today's session on native plant landscaping maintenance.
Nice, thank you, Bridget. And I can hear the applause over Zoom. Thank you guys for all the applause, I appreciate it. No, for real, you guys can stop. Bring it down. I'm gonna have to start eventually. Bring it down, everybody. All right, that's so stupid. So in typical Sanchez form, I just finished this PowerPoint like 30 minutes ago, and I didn't have time to fix this this slide. Look at this. Oh, this pencil. Let me. This is the worst opening slide I've ever had. Look at this. Look at how boring that is. That's so. They say the opening slide is representative of what the whole talk is going to be like. This is my whole talk is going to be boring and bland. So get ready, buckle up. So thank you, Bridget. I appreciate CNC Music Factory, as I call you guys. CNC Music Factory has to be an excellent organization that Samo Fund, who I work for, we're partners, and I think we do a lot of great work together. So thank you. You guys have a huge reach and a huge audience that we don't reach at Samo Fund. So welcome to CNC folks who sometimes maybe don't join us in the Santa Monica Mountains where we're at. And then welcome to all the folks through Samo Fund. So we're gonna cover native plant maintenance. We're gonna do an introduction to native plant maintenance. A lot of stuff that we're gonna cover today. I'm gonna get so tired of my voice right now. I'm gonna be just talking and talking and talking. Before I begin talking, I want to give thanks. I think it's very important that I give thanks to a lot of people that I have learned from, a lot of people that a lot of us have benefited from in one way or another. My personal story is with plants began in farms. And I learned a lot working, planting strawberries, farming medicinal crops, and then going to school in Northern California, where I didn't finish school, but I still met some good people and I got some great jobs out there, again, on farms. And that's when I got into native plants and started working at Cal Flora Nursery. I used to work at Theodore Payne, and I have a lot of friends that are there. My cousin and I and a good friend used to own Nopalito Native Plant Nursery in Ventura. We're very proud of that. People still ask us to this day about that nursery. We're open for almost 4 years, selling low water and mostly California native plants. I used to work at Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden. Now it's called California Botanic Garden. I love the people there. I don't call it California Botanic Garden because to me, they took the whole state and they named their garden after the whole state. You need to show me that you deserve that name. The garden right below them is Santa Barbara Botanic Garden. Now that's a little bit more respectful, right? Santa Barbara, we're going to name it after the county or the city. But Rancho, which I will probably always call it, just took the whole state. And I love those people. But anyways, when did this talk become me talking mess on the people that I'm saying thank you to? I should just say thank you. My friends at Chia Cafe and other Native folks before and now who help pass and share these traditions and a lot of this knowledge along. So like Bridget said, if you all have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box and we'll get to them as we can today. This is what we're gonna go over. The basics, we're gonna go over a lot, in depth, but this is kind of the schedule. I'll give you guys an idea of how to plant a native plant, which might sound stupid, but this is probably one of the most important things that I can cover is how to correctly plant a plant. I want to give you a few minutes on my mindset when I'm doing landscaping or native plant gardening. I want to describe flexible and adaptable plants and how they're easy to use in landscapes or how you might create them in landscapes. I want to talk about winter maintenance. Right now is winter. You can step outside, put your coat on, and it's 82 damn degrees outside. This is winter in Southern California. So I'll talk about winter maintenance, and then I'll give you tips along the way on irrigation, pruning, fertilizing, etc. You can take notes if you'd like, no need to. I just sent Bridget this PDF. So you guys can, or not, I actually think Bridget will just email the whole group. Once you get that PDF in your mailbox, just go ahead and send me through eBay $10 for the talk. This talk is aimed at beginners. So folks who are just new into native plants, new into native plant gardening, and intermediate folks too. And I think even some advanced landscapers would benefit from some of the information, and they might fall asleep during half of the information. What I want to get across to you is what I'm going to talk about today, anyone can do. Anyone can grow successfully California native plants in Southern California gardens, right? If you just follow some of my rules, some of my tips, they're very, very easy. So I want to get that across. If you guys have had a hard time, if you've killed stuff, we can probably figure out through this talk what you've done incorrectly and try to fix it. And so my goal for today is for you guys to get your money's worth. I don't know how to spell money, so I just put all 6 examples. How much did they pay for this class, Bridget?
It was free 99.
Free 99. All right. You guys are already getting your money's worth. I can hear you guys laughing too. And by laughing, I mean you guys are checking out Netflix right now while you have this in the background. I want to emphasize that we're coming from different backgrounds, not just like culturally and all that, but we all live in different areas. So I want to break down Southern California as I talk about landscaping into 3 groups. The coastal area, which would be like Oxnard, Malibu, areas that get a lot of coastal influence. A lot of the homes don't have any air conditioning. It's 75 degrees during the summer. It doesn't really get hotter than that. If it gets past 80, people are freaking out. That's coastal. And then we can go inland, right? A little bit hotter, which would be like Thousand Oaks, parts of Irvine, areas that get 80 to about 95 degrees. Every now and then it might get 100. But these folks are a lot cooler. Not that they're cooler, like they have like nice cars or whatever, but they're cooler than the true inland areas that are almost like desert or really get past 100 all the time, consistently during the summer. That would be like Agora Hills, Simi Valley. A lot of these areas where you hear like, it's the hottest spot in Southern California. We have a lot of those areas. So I want you to be able to understand where you're doing your landscaping, where your garden fits in, where your home fits in as I go forward. There's my email. If you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to email me. And real quick, another hype. I want to promote this horticultural training program that we have. It's almost over, so I don't want you to join us now. And it's actually kind of a disaster because of COVID. But we did it. We just missed half the classes because half of them were supposed to be in person. But if anybody's interested in taking some training classes, especially once COVID is over or once restrictions are lifted, please email me. We'll be starting up another 10-week program. Hopefully, seems like now by like March. But I'm interested in training folks who want to learn more about nursery work, landscaping work, horticulture work with native plants. And we always have the chance here at the National Park Service for you guys to join us for restoration events. My email is there at the bottom, and we do have 2 more classes through Zoom. They're not through Community Nature Connection, so if you guys are interested, I think you can see my what's it called, my little thing here, the little arrow. February 12th, you have to go to Samo Fund Eventbrite. Just type that in, and you'll find the class. Or February 19th, Samo Fund Eventbrite, and you'll find another maintenance class that gets even more intense. We'll go into stuff like pests. We'll go into stuff like irrigation, like the specific timing to run, how long to run your irrigation systems for, problems that you really only run into with landscapes that are 3 to 5 years old or older. So this is going to be a semi-basic introduction to landscape maintenance. And February 19th, once we have that basic, it's going to get more in depth. And a few resources for maintenance. There's a lot of native plant websites out there. There's a lot of native plant books, all sorts of stuff. These are my top ones right now. I love these resources. I use them on a weekly basis. So I want to highly recommend my friend Greg Rubin's book, The Drought Defined Garden. And he has a great website as well. If you guys could only buy one book or steal one from Barnes & Noble, this is the one that you would steal. Make sure you take that magnetic strip out from the middle. I'm not, are we still, hopefully we're not recording, Bridget. Scratch that. I'm not promoting stealing. That you guys should buy it. Sam Marco's Growers website. I love the person who runs that website, or the main person who runs that website, is super descriptive. And he talks not just about the plants and how pretty they are, but how they do in coastal areas, how they do in hot inland areas. And so they have great recommendations for how to water, etc. So that's one of my go-to websites for plants. It's not all native, but it's got very, very good information. I love Las Pilitas Nursery for this, for maintenance. I think Bert Wilson, rest in peace, did an amazing job with low input, low minimal maintenance gardens. And I like his style, and I think it's very approachable when it comes to maintenance. So I highly recommend Las Pilitas Nursery for irrigation advice, maintenance advice, planting advice, etc. I love the UC Davis Arboretum All-Star list for plants that are great for hot areas with clay soils. If you guys want to get pictures and you want to see the plants up close, you can usually go in person to go see them at the Theodore Payne Garden Tour. Unfortunately, the garden tour is going to be online this year, but I think it's still worth checking out because you can see what some of your gardens and what some of these plants are going to look like full grown. When you buy a plant and it's like 6 inches tall, it's hard to believe that it's going to get 15 feet. So the garden tour picks some of the most beautiful native plant gardens in Southern California. The gardens have to have over 50% native. It's a beautiful tour, so I highly recommend it. I think it comes up in March. And if you guys have any interest in volunteering with us in the nursery or for restoration, there's my email again. And then just a special thanks to Artemisia Nursery in El Sedano. They've been really supportive of a program that we have that I'll tell you about a little bit later that involves free plants to the public. So I want to give them a shout out. And if you have not visited them, I would recommend you ordering online because they're not open to the public right now, but they are open for sales. You just need to order online. So the first question that we should have when we're doing maintenance is, what look are you going for? A lot of people want to do native plants and they want what is in the wild, and that's cool. If you want your plants to look in your garden like they do in the Santa Monica Mountains in August, I'm going to ask you to click off of Zoom right now, get you a beer or whatever else you might be drinking this time and kick it, because you're done. There's nothing to do. But if you want your garden to look a little bit better than the Santa Monica Mountains, if you want it to look a little bit fresher, if you want there to be a little bit more flowers, if you want there to be some more green leaves instead of brown leaves, that's what I'm promoting right now. There's nothing wrong with that, what I'm going to call wild look or unmanaged look. There's nothing wrong with that at all. There's plenty of gardens I see with it. But this maintenance class is specifically for folks who want to take their garden in urbanize to the next level a little bit, right? To make it shine a little bit, to make it look a little bit greener, to have there be more flowers. So I got to cover what a drought tolerant California native plant is. We have over 6,000 plants native to California. Please, if you're going to plant redwoods, go ahead and plant them, but click off this this Zoom class. This Zoom class has nothing to do with redwoods. If you're gonna plant upper elevation penstemon from 7,000 feet that have snow on them for 7 months or not 7 months, like 3 or 4 months, click off. This is not what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about today is plants at the very bottom. You can see here, chaparral, like our ceanothus, our manzanitas. I'll show you a picture of these when we go forward. Our oak woodlands, our hummingbird sage, our beautiful iris. We're looking for coastal sage scrub. I'm focusing on local plants that thrive in this area without very much water, without very much maintenance, without very much fertilizer, right? And those plants remember. But the best description I have is my mom, rest in peace. She used to wear tacones. She used to wear high heels, and she was a little woman, anyways. But she had her feet, when she would take off her high heel, her foot was smashed. It would hold this form, right? And imagine if she had been doing that for thousands of years. That would be awesome because she'd still be alive. And I don't even know where this analogy is going anymore. But my point is that the more you do something, the more you remember it. And our plants literally have been here for hundreds, if not thousands of years, remembering these 2 points right here that I need you to figure out. I need you to understand. Our plants, like my mom's feet, my mom had beautiful feet, by the way. Hopefully you aren't imagining like these wild, like these nails, these uñas just growing everywhere, and like funky green toes and all that. Anyways, man, this is going off, Bridget. I don't even know what's going on today. So I need you to remember these 2 things. Like these 2 things are my mom's feet. Our plants remember being wet during the winter. That's when they get it. And they're used to being dry during what we're going to call the dry season, right? You could say the summer, but it's really like April to October. If you guys don't understand that, then we're going to have a hard time moving forward. Other things that our plants are that remember really well is fire. They remember Santa Anas. They laugh at Santa Anas for the most part. They remember being in different types of soils. They remember being in full sun during the summer and part shade during the winter. It's very common to find plants in 2 different soil or sun exposures during different times of year. You might see it in full sun, like, oh man, this is crazy during the summer. And then you come in the winter when the sun's lower and it's like full shade almost. So our plants, a lot of them are very adaptable and they remember a lot of this. But I need you to know this because most of the plants that you find in native plant nurseries are from the wild or 1 generation removed. So they have they remember that intensely. So I want to talk to you about 6 plants that are very popular. Like I said, I've been doing this for over 15 years. Like if you had to start a native plant nursery today and you could only sell 6 plants, these are your 6 best selling plants. You could, I don't know that you'd make a killing off these because a lot of other nurseries sell them anyways, but these are very, very common landscaping plants. And I want you guys to become familiar with them. And I'm going to introduce landscaping ideas, maintenance ideas as I talk about these plants. So the first one is Foothill Penstemon. Let me take a little drink right here. Guys don't know what's in that cup. So let me take I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Bridget, help me.
Bring it in.
I'm loose right now. Anyways, so the first one, Foothill Penstemon, in my experience at Nopalito and other nurseries, this is the best selling native perennial. What is a perennial, Antonio? That's a great question, Antonio. A perennial is a plant that usually lives for more than 2 years, usually 5 years, sometimes 10 years. They're usually small. We usually use them in landscapes for flowers. We usually use them in groups of 3s or 5s. We like to use them in bunches. But this is probably the most popular. What I want to show you is this map of where Foothill Penstemon grows in what we're going to call the wild across California. It grows in a whole bunch of different areas, right? So I like to see a plant that does that because it usually translates it to be a very easy plant to grow in the garden. So Foothill Penstemon, we're looking at it right here. We can see the leaves that are green, almost like a rosemary type leaf. And then the flower stalks that come above the plant and are pink, purple, and a little bit of blue sometimes you can see in there. So this is a little patch of Penstemon Margarita Bop. There's a few different clones. There's a few different hybrids of this plant. I want you to treat them all as the same for maintenance purposes. These would be Penstemon heterophyllus, Penstemon Margarita Bop, Penstemon electric blue. They're all genetically slightly different, but for this talk, they're going to be the same, okay? So I want you guys to know that they're easy to grow as long as you leave them alone. I'll tell you what leaving them alone means in a little bit. They should be in full sun to light shade. They really don't like it like under heavy oak trees. They don't like it where irises might be or where part shade is, right? They like light shade to very full sun. They don't mind clay soils. They love clay soils if you can keep the clay soil dry. It's a great cut flower plant. I love cutting the flowers and up and down the stalk. The flowers don't open all at once, so you can cut a stem and have them over like a week start to open up. It's pretty cool. And this plant is loved by birds, bees, butterflies, hippies. That was funny when I wrote it. It's not funny right now. I apologize. I'm going to move forward. Here's a few extra notes I have for Penstemon Margarita Bop. If you have a design, if you want to, if you're a designer or if you look on the line and you see something you like and you don't find it at a nursery, easily substitute electric blue for Margarita Bop. Easily substitute Margarita Bop for a Foothill Penstemon. The next point, I want to encourage you guys to plant 4-inch plants, 5-inch plants. These are what we call courts or plants in little pots. They get established really fast. And if you're a designer or if you've done a landscape that has 3 or 5 of these, if you're buying 1-gallon plants, they could cost $9 or $10. 5 plants times $10 is $50. That's a lot of money for such a small plant, right? And I'm happy to announce that we have hundreds of these plants to give away. I love this plant. So at the end, I'll tell you how you can get a hold of us so we can get you some of these plants if you want to try them out. This plant, maybe most importantly for maintenance, you need to deadhead. You do not need to deadhead if you want your garden to look like it looks in the Santa Monica's in August. But you need to deadhead if you want to have more flowers and you want the plant to be green. So what is deadheading? Deadheading is basically just removing the part of the plant that was going to fall off anyways. It was the reproductive part. It was the flowers. It was the seed. It was the flowering stalk. I'm going to show you guys a few pictures later on, but this plant responds really well to deadheading. I have had this plant flower 3 times with 3 flushes of flowers with consistent deadheading and with a little bit of water. What is a little bit of water? I'm going to explain how you guys should water during the dry season to keep this plant flexible and to let it not go dormant. If you guys were to see this plant in August and September in the Santa Monica Mountains, you might be like, oh, I don't know if I want that plant in my garden. If you see it in a lightly watered, a lightly maintained garden, it is phenomenal, right? It is possible to give this plant too much water, especially with the drip system right at the neck of the plant in clay soil. So be careful with that. I'll get into irrigation more in a little bit. I consider this plant to be Ishi. I will tell you the story of Ishi in a few slides, but this is Ishi. The best way to make this guy happy is to treat him as you would Ishi in the story I'm about to tell you. And landscape designers, landscape maintenance folks, we love to see this and we love to maintain it and plant it in groups of 3s, 5s, 7s, 9s, 11s. For whatever reason, those combinations tend to look really, really good. So let's get into another perennial, Hummingbird Sage. This is a super popular one too. This is a perennial, so another 2 to 5 to 10-year liver, maybe even more. But this guy grows differently. Where Penstemon Margarita Bop is all above ground, it's a nice little slightly woody plant. Hummingbird Sage grows below ground and spreads. This is possible that this could be 2 or 3 plants right here that we're looking at. This is at Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden. I love this planting. This planting in full sun, I'm sorry, not full sun, under, I forget what tree it's under, lightly watered every 10 days, July and August is green all year round. This one doesn't go dormant. Let me show you a picture of what Hummingbird Sage looks like with no water in the wild. This is Hummingbird Sage, July and August. Once it's gone through 3 or 4 months of no water, I'm not going to call it drought because it's not a drought. That's just when plants don't get water in California. They turn off. It's really smart of plants to do that. If we keep watering just a little bit to keep them flexible, this is what we can have, right? We can have flowers from December to about May or June. and we can have green leaves to where it looks almost like a lawn all year round in Southern California. There's no reason we can't. We just have to keep them flexible, right? And there's the distribution. That's where you find hummingbird sage across what we're going to call the wild in California. So a few points on hummingbird sage. UC Davis loves it enough to put on their 100 best plants for California gardens. It's a great winter and spring flowering plant. The hummingbirds love it, easy to grow. If you're in the inland areas, right, the Thousand Oaks Middle or the hot inland, it always has to be in light or part shade. If you're in coastal Oxnard or Malibu, it can be in full sun to light shade. People use it for tea, honey, etc. You can deadhead this, right? So there's the leaf that is the plant, and then there's the reproductive part, the stem of the plant. And if you remove those as they go dry, which I'll show you guys pictures of, they can flower for, like I said, over 5 months. I love this plant. And with water, don't let it go for 3 to 4 months without water like it does in the wild. It can be kept green all year. This plant is beautiful in pots. I love it in large wine barrels. Sex cells, what the hell does that mean? What it means is when you're trying to design and when you're trying to commit people to buying stuff in nurseries, the fact that hummingbirds love this, the fact that you can use it for food, the fact that you can eat. I use it in my honey. You can just take 3 or 5 leaves and blend it in a bottle of honey, and you can have hummingbird sage honey. Whatever story we can tell with our plants to connect folks to our plants besides, oh, it's a cool local plant. Those people love hearing those stories, right? And so it's a great plant to tell a story with. When this plant is young, it wants to spike up and stop growing. And I'm gonna encourage you guys to cut that back to make it go underground. Remember I said it grows underground. I'll show you guys pictures of it growing underground. We wanna avoid the first flowers on this plant. The first time you've seen a flower of this plant, it should be cut back immediately. We don't want it. Basically the plant flowering, this plant flowering, is it saying, I had sex, I'm gonna have a baby, and I'm gonna kick it for a while. I don't want to grow leaves anymore. And what we wanna do is say, let's cut the stem off. I want you to grow more leaves and eventually flower again. So I'll show you some pictures of that in a little bit. Dormant in Ojai again, if you see this plant in March, full flower in Ojai, it's beautiful. And then you go to the same spot in August, you might not even find it, but we can keep it green all year with minimal water. It does get powdery mildew, which is little white spots on the leaf, especially if you're overhead watering too much during the cold season or the rainy season. It usually goes away. But if you have powdery mildew all year on this, it's because you're watering too much overhead or you have it in the wrong spot, too dark a spot. This plant's super adaptable, super flexible. And when you're buying a plant, you want to look for a plant that doesn't have a flower stalk and is not huge. You want to look for plants that have multiple leaves and are starting to spread in the pot. That's what I love to see. So white sage, let's talk about white sage. White sage, if you look at the distribution, this is super interesting because it is distinctly Southern California, right? There's a few Northern California. I think those are botanic gardens. Those aren't really out in what we're going to call the wild. It really starts in San Luis Obispo and it comes in hard, Ventura, LA, San Diego, down into Baja. This plant really remembers rocky slopes. It really remembers full sun. It doesn't remember clay soil. It doesn't remember level soil like most of our houses are on. And so when you take a plant that has remembered for thousands of years a slope and rocky soil, and you put it the next year into flat clay soil and you water it every 3 days, they usually freak out. And that's how people usually kill our white sage. I want to show you guys when you're looking at this plant, if you can see my little cursor here, my little arrow, the white part, right here, these beautiful leaves, that's the plant. And then the reproductive part are these stems and these flowers, right? This is going to fall up the plant every year, right? So this is actually kind of not really part of the plant. Imagine like a mom. This is the mom, and these are her children. The children will eventually leave. So what we're interested in is the mother, right? Taking care of the mother. And yeah, it's a lot of mom talk today. Bridget, is it like close to Mother's Day or what's going on? You don't have to answer that. Sorry. So white sage, Salvia piana, easy to grow if you leave it alone. Yes. Stop watering. This is when I used to own our nursery. This is the plant that we would get complaints about most. It was hard to grow. That I would kill it. Can I have a refund? Can I get a free plant, etc. Turns out that hippies with Priuses are kind of cheap. They're looking for free plants because they don't know how to grow their stuff. You just need to leave it alone. You need to stop babying it. And I'll explain the mindset I use when I stop babying something. This is being recorded. I should watch what I'm saying. So full sun, always. Tolerant of clay soils if you keep it dry. Why am I just reading off my slides? I hate when people do that. You could use this for cut flowers. A lot of people use it for foliage. The birds, bees, butterflies, hippies. That's twice I mentioned hippies with this plant. So because of this plant and a few others, people think that natives are hard to grow. It's not that native plants are hard to grow. It's that they don't forget. They're slow to forget. And that's good because I wouldn't want to forget stuff that I've been through multiple times, right? So these plants, again, have been there hundreds or thousands of years. And some of them really remember where they came from. And when we put them in flat clay soils and stick a drip emitter right on their neck, they don't know what that is. That's what a sycamore lives with, right? That's what an alnus, that's what some of our riparian or wetland plants live with. That's not what white sage lives with. White sage is not anything like some of the Chihuahuan sages, is not anything like Mexican sage. Most of our sages are very unique. So just because you see the name Salvia or sage doesn't mean it's like really any other sage you might have grown. I don't think this plant's very pretty in flower. I think I'm gonna go back to the flower, but it's super useful for bees, butterflies. It feeds wildlife. The seeds feed birds. I love using this plant against shiny, dark green leaves because the contrast is gorgeous. And again, in my eyes, this plant is Ishi. I will tell you the story in a little bit. A few more plants that we're gonna focus on. Ceanothus Yankee Point. This plant is super easy to grow. People think Ceanothus is hard to grow. That's false. Ceanothus are fairly easy to grow. If you pick from a handful of easy ones, Yankee Point is probably the easiest. It can grow 5 to 10 feet wide in 2 to 3 years. You got to give it the space. You got to give it the time. It doesn't take much time to grow. You need to give it the space, really. People, they plant it too close together. Anyways, I've seen this growing under oak trees in Simi Valley. You can see it in full sun next to the coast. It's a very adaptable plant. It can take sand. It's super, super adaptable. Very, very easy plant. I have a whole slide on maintaining Ceanothus, so I will get more into it when we get there. But this one's super easy. Island Snapdragon. This guy's only from the Channel Islands, so you might not see a lot of distribution. But this one you can find at Home Depot and Lowe's. It's very, very easy to find in almost any nursery nowadays. Again, it's easy to grow. Hummingbirds love it. This is an interesting plant in that it's flexible. We can do a lot with it. I've seen it trained up a trellis, and you can grow it, 5 or 10 feet tall if you want. If you let it go down a slope, it'll actually kind of let gravity take it and grow pretty far. Or you can maintain it just as above. That's not the picture. You can maintain it as a little ball, 3 or 4 feet tall and wide. It's a beautiful little box hedge. I love this in a pot because it kind of bounces and it spreads out. So that's an introduction to snapdragon. And then one more, deergrass. Deergrass is found everywhere in California. You can see the distribution by the blue points. A really cool plant for landscapers. If you guys know me, you probably heard me say that I don't like this plant. I don't really like this plant. I think it doesn't look all that good all year, but it's a good plant for a basketry. It's probably a great wildlife plant. It's very easy to maintain. You can see people like Caltrans, larger landscape companies using this, hundreds of them in rows, right? Just hundreds of them. And they come and cut them down. Almost any time of year, they can be cut down. When we cut stuff back, I'll get into maintenance, actual cutting of stuff. When we cut stuff back, we try to avoid cutting back hard during the hot season, right? Just imagine cutting back as shaving your head. Would you want to shave your head in July, August, or September out in Riverside and then just go out to the sun, right? That's pretty brutal. And so that's what a hard cut is. Easy, small, mini cuts, like taking 1/4 of the plant, taking 1/3 of the plant. That's not so much, right? If you have a full head, I'm going to use Bridget's hair. Bridget, you change your hair. It's beautiful. If Bridget cut her hair like 1/4 or 1/3, her scalp would not get sunburned, right? But if Bridget shaved her head and then went out to the full sun in Riverside in July, August, September, her scalp would probably get sunburned. But if she did the same thing in December, January, February, it probably wouldn't, because there's less sun, the sun's cooler, etc. That's a really bad analogy, but we want to cut back stuff hard when the plant wants to grow and when it's cooler. And we want to do minimal cuts, the hot time, the dormant time for plants, right? So I want to show you guys a video. I don't know if she's watching, but you're about to be a star, Jamie B. This is our video that we just put out on how to prune native sages. So I got a few comments after it, but I'll just let it play.
Hi, my name is Jamie, and today I'm going to be showing you
Antonio, can you turn up the volume? It's hard to hear. The sound isn't coming in very clear.
You say that the sound's not coming through?
Right.
Okay, this is what happens when Antonio tries to do technology. Antonio and technology are not cool. So the good thing about this is that you can see all the, the subtitles on the bottom, and that's gonna save my butt. So let me let it play, and then we'll talk. I don't think I'm gonna be able, unless someone has like a quick 10-second fix for me. I don't know that I'll be fit. All my volumes is all, oh, wait, maybe that's, I was listening to
Angel said you can share if you optimize it for videos, which is at the top.
Okay, give me 1 second. Now I'm pretty sure I just broke my computer. I don't even know how to get out of this. How do I get out? I don't even know how to get out of this.
Hi, my name is Jamie, and today I'm going to be showing you how to...
It sounds a lot better, so now share your screen while it plays.
Oh, is my sheet not being shared?
No, it's your face now.
Oh, dale, that is ugly. Let's. Okay, let me see. Let me figure this out. Hold on 1 second. Okay, let me go over here. I'm gonna check my email real quick. Okay, let me go here. Okay. Is that better?
Do you see a box that says optimize anywhere? And that'll help the sound.
Nope. I don't see any boxes that say optimize. It's gonna say optimize?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, optimize for video clip?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Be done any time of the year.
Yay.
However, heavy pruning should only be done when the plant breaks dormancy. During summer is when the plant becomes dormant, and during winter is when it breaks dormancy. So when you lightly shape, you're just going to be cutting 1/3 down the stem, and you want to cut right above the node where the leaf and the plant meet, because this extra is dead and it won't grow from there. You also want to be cutting these dead flowers off because these won't grow anymore. Now that I've showed you how to lightly shape.
So I lied. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I lied. I'm gonna stop it. I want to explain what's happening just to make sure you guys are all good. So we're trying to do two things in the video. I want to show you how to maintain subshrubs, which are 2 to about 5 feet tall. So all she's doing right there was removing the flowering stalks. They long ago stopped flowering, probably 6 months ago. They've been hanging on the plant, and we're just ready to remove them. You guys can remove them any time of year. Like I said, it's like the baby of the mom, right? We're not interested in the babies anymore. We're looking at the plant now. So we can remove those any time of year. And you can also do, she mentioned about 1/3 cut. You can cut the sage basically any time of year, 1/4 to about 1/3 down, right? That's a very light pruning for something that's only about 4 feet tall. So you can take 6 to 12 inches down whenever you want, just to kind of lightly shape. But what she's gonna get into now is the hard pruning. If something's too woody, if you guys have ever grown lavenders, you might see lavenders get real woody. They kind of split open sometimes. This is how we reshape lavenders, and this is how we reshape our sages is this time of year, and I'll let Jamie B take it over.
Which can be done any time of the year. Now I'm going to show you how to heavily prune. Instead of taking 1/3 of the stem off, I'm now going to be taking 2/3 of the stem off when I want to heavily prune. When we heavily prune, one thing to keep in mind, this is opportunity to shape the plant how you want to grow it. So as you can see, this plant is a bit lap-sided. So since we're going to be pruning, I'm going to take this opportunity to shape it more evenly. Keep in mind, we don't want to cut our plants too even because we would like a naturally aesthetic look. So cut them a bit unevenly, some high, some low, to keep it looking natural. At this point, it's a really good time to take a step back and see where we're looking at. This is what we want, and this is where we're at. As you can see, this side's a bit lap-sided, so we're gonna go on that side and trim it down. Here I'll be doing some heavier pruning, making sure I cut at the node. So you'll know you're done with heavily pruning when it looks something like this. It's even, it's all trimmed down, and it's ready for the new growth. Thank you so much for watching.
Nice, Jamie B. I don't even, how do I get out of this screen? What's wrong with me? Antonio, get better at computers or fire yourself. Let's see. I don't even know what I just did. I think now I go here. So hopefully you guys caught that. Hopefully my computer doesn't crash right now. I'm gonna show you one more video on maintenance. Actually, let me talk about, yeah, so that was woody shrubs. You could do that with lavender, right? Lavender's not native, but the same applies to lavender. Encilla californica, California sunflower, Encilla farinosa, brittlebush, California buckwheat. There's a lot of 2 to about 5 foot plants that we want to do this to. Any time of year, remove the flowers, the hard shaping. I'll show you guys some more pictures in a second. The hard shaping is done this time of year. And as you notice, Jamie B was cutting down, she said up to 2/3 of the plant, right? So she's taking a 3 or 4 foot tall plant and she's pruning it down to almost a foot, 18 inches. She's doing it randomly, so it's not a box. And she was always cutting at a node. That's where the leaf comes out. And and that left a pretty nice little ball. And that's gonna create a ton of space and room for the plant to just take off during the spring, instead of always trying to grow from the old growth and kind of get woody and, like she said, lopsided, right? Again, this does not have to be done. It's not done in the wild except for birds breaking stuff, deer breaking stuff, and fires. But in our landscapes, sometimes things grow awkwardly. Maybe there's too much shade and the plant starts to go somewhere else to reach for sun. And if you want to reshape it, now is the perfect time. When we get some rain, when the weather is cool, and when those sub-shrubs, those 2 to 5 foot shrubs, start to break dormancy and they start to throw out some leaves.
You have to share your screen again.
This is I hope you guys are laughing, because this is sad. Share my screen. Son of a biscuit. Okay, is it on now?
My name is Jamie, and today I'm going to be showing you how to cut and maintain California fuchsia, or Epilobium canum. First thing to know about your California fuchsia is that cutting back should never be done to plants less than a year old. It also grows by rhizomes, meaning it grows underground. Because of this, we cut back hard in preparation for the fresh spring growth. These are some of the tools we will be using: some hand pruners and shears. Since we're going to be cutting back hard, I'm going to be using the large shears to get rid of all the dead wood. Now I'm going to be using the smaller pruning scissors to be more precise. Here you can see where the new growth has started and the old growth we're going to be cutting off all the way to the ground. So here you could see the new growth that we left. It is a lot smaller and more manageable than the old growth that we cut off. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned to learn more about native plant maintenance for your garden.
Man, this is a disaster. I'm really good at not knowing what, I'm surprised I can even answer my phone sometimes. So sorry about that, guys. I wasn't even sharing like my whole screen. The point here is that we're trying to show you plants that grow by rhizome. They grow underground. This would be mugwort. This would be Epilobium canum, hummingbird sage. There's a lot of plants that specifically for California fuchsia, For this example, there's a lot of plants that flower summer or fall. Solidago, Western goldenrod would be another one. And they start to look a little ratty this time of year. And if you guys can follow my cursor, this whole plant right here is all the California fuchsia. It's all dormant. There's a little bit of green, right? What's going to happen if we don't cut it back, which is what happens in the wild, right? So it doesn't have to happen. But if we don't cut it back, all the new growth is going to come from the ground, but then also from these woody stems. And sometimes there's a bunch of wood that doesn't have growth, and you'll get this random looking growth that looks kind of, it doesn't look uniform anymore. And in the wild, you might not see it because a lot of times fuchsia actually grows in between other plants. And so it looks really pretty. But in our gardens, we usually don't plant it inside stuff. We plant it on its own. So for me, it's very important that every year we plant. I like to trim down California fuchsia every year, except for the first year. The first year we don't touch it because it grows underground. And I want to make sure the plant has spread underground enough to handle that pruning, right? So if you were to plant a California fuchsia now, which you should, you would not do this next December. You would wait till December 2022. And then you would hammer it home, hammer it to the ground. I think we just recorded this like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So cut it to the ground and you'll see once spring comes up, you'll see all this new growth and you won't have any of that wood. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh God, give me a second, guys. This is fun. Okay, am I sharing my screen still, Bridget?
No, you're not. But while we're here, I just want to confirm those videos are available on the Samo Fund social media accounts, right?
Yeah, yes, they're on Samo Fund social media and they're on Samo Fund YouTube.
Perfect.
You know what else is on YouTube? It's probably a how to do videos on PowerPoint, and I should probably watch that. Jesus, am I not sharing my screen for reals? Oh, it says I am.
Now you are. Yeah, now you are.
Yeah. All right. I'm just gonna. I would like to announce this is the last presentation I'm ever going to give. So enjoy. I'm done after this.
I hope you're kidding.
If it keeps going this bad. Anyway, so now I have to switch to my internet. So I want to show you guys some pictures now. These pictures were taken today. Can you guys see this?
Share your screen, please.
Son of a biscuit. Come on, dude. What's wrong with you? Okay, let's start right here.
Okay. Great.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so purple sage, Salvia leucophylla. Here it is. It flowered along. The one in the front, right? Not the. I think lemonade berry in the back. Salvia leucophylla. This is probably a few years old. We may have pruned this last year. So the flowering stalks probably flowered June, July. They've been done, be flowered. Birds probably were hanging out on these stems. They ate all the seeds. You can remove those stems any time of year. And if you can imagine what removing those stems would look like, you would be left with a ball of probably 2 to 3 foot tall plant material, just the stems with leaves on them. This plant has either not gone dormant or broken dormancy. There's leaves up and down the stems. If you want to prune this hard, which is what we want to do this time of year, only this time of year, right? If you need to do it, this is the time to do it. And we know this plant's ready because it's clearly showing us leaves all up and down the stems. And that means it's going to respond to pruning. If you were to look at this plant in the wild in probably August, September, you would see most of these leaves fall off. Most of those stems would be naked, and it would be a very bad time to do hard cutting. Not a bad time to do pruning of the flowers in the summer. And you can even pinch just a little bit off if it's growing too much in your sidewalk or whatever. But the hard stuff, I can't stress enough. You need to see the signs of this plant that it's ready to respond. So here's one again from the top. That's a bad picture. I don't know why I took that picture. Matella poppy. This is a plant that grows by rhizome. So it grows underground, just like that California fuchsia. These flower in June, maybe July. They're beautiful. Now they're breaking dormancy. You can see all the whole picture is Matella poppy. The sign that this is breaking dormancy is two things. You can see leaves, new leaves emerging from the old stems. And then if you get up close, you can see on the ground, there's all these new stems, all these leaves coming up. So they're leaves right now, but eventually they'll just be hard stems. Right now is a perfect time to cut back Matella poppy hard. Cut it to the ground, cut it to a 12-inch ball if you're not confident enough of cutting it to the ground, and it'll respond right back with beautiful growth. and beautiful flowers by May or June. This is Salvia californica, California sunflower. So I'm going to fit this into the same area as the sages, right? Those subshrubs that go dormant during the summer. You wouldn't want to prune them hard during the summer, and then they start to break dormancy during the winter this time of year, right? So what we're looking at now is this Salvia californica. This is the main growth. If you guys can follow my cursor, out here is a lot of wild growth. It may be looking for sun. I think this plant's kind of leaning over here looking for sun. So what we did is I had one of our great interns, Raman. Oh, sorry. So I did a close-up picture of the Salvia californica, so you can see right here. These are the nodes. This is the plant with a bunch of green leaves up and down, breaking. And they're beautiful. They're ready to be cut, right? This is a signal that this plant, when you see it up and down the stems, specifically at the lower part of the plant, this plant is ready to respond to cutting. And so Raman took her pruners and shaped it a little bit. And then I asked her to take it down about 2/3. And that's a pretty even pruning. That's what's left. So that's about a 12-inch, maybe 15-inch ball, a little bit taller than a basketball. And this time of year, if we were to zoom in on here, oh my God, do I want to do this? Chicles. All right, if my computer explodes, you guys know what happened. So you can see all of these stems have leaves on them. Right? Some of them have big leaves from a few months ago. Some of them have these baby leaves. I'm going to zoom out so my computer doesn't explode. That's what we're looking for hard pruning. You don't have to do this. I would recommend it either every year or every other year with the Salvia californica, because they can get kind of woody and they sometimes can get leggy. But you hammer it back to the ground this time of year as long as you see that new growth, and you're good. California buckwheat, I'm gonna use in the same group as the sages and the woody sages, right? The bush sages and the California sunflower I just showed you. This is California buckwheat. These are the stems. If you guys can see these brown stems, they used to have flowers on them. All these flowers are gone now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and just deadhead the top. Hopefully you guys can see the difference now. This looks like rosemary now. There's no more woody stems. Those are all gone. There's some in the back half. So I just did half just to show you guys. Now I'm going to do the whole thing. And now this is the whole plant with flower stems removed. You can do that any time of year. Usually it'll be in fall because the plant flowers in summer, but so you can do it right after it flowers in the fall if you want. But if we're going to do hard pruning, we want to, I forgot to take a picture of it after done. I hammered this thing back. It got left to about maybe 24-inch box, kind of roundish box. So this can be hammered hard this time of year if we need to shape it. And what I ended up doing was I didn't like this sticking out too much. It was kind of going away from the plant. And there was another part back over here. So I ended up bringing it really compact. And that plant should be ready to respond and start growing very, very soon. This is Penstemon Margarita Bop, that first perennial that I showed you with the beautiful pink purple flower. This thing stopped flowering a long time ago, and this is the flowering stems, right? So this is what a lot of people have, and they're like, oh, it doesn't look that good. So here's what you do. We're gonna just remove the flowering stems. Here's half of them removed. That's very easy. I'm not cutting into the plant. I'm just cutting the dead wood. And I'm gonna finish up cutting the dead wood, and this is what it looks like when we're done. This is the tool I use, these little hand shears. And then from here, I shaped it because this is the time of year that penstemons want to start breaking dormancy and they want to start growing. I don't want to wait too long because penstemons can flower pretty quick. They can start flowering in March or April. If I wait too long to prune, then I'm going to probably cut off some of the stems that might be flowering. So I don't want to wait too long. So December, January is perfect time. And I'm going to cut it back even hard. It's kind of hard to tell here, but I made it skinny by about half. So I'm going to go back to the first picture. So it was wider, maybe about 18 inches, maybe 2 feet wide. And then I took it down to a smaller ball. You don't want to do this in July and August, right? And there's the final product. And white sage, it's just another woody native sage. So there's two different ones here. I'm going to focus on the first one. This guy flowered a long time ago with these huge long stems. Remember, this is really not part of the plant. This is the mom that we want to maintain, and this is the old babies and all the seeds pretty much gone out of this one. So I'm gonna deadhead it or just remove the dead flowers. So notice the back one still has the flowers and the front one. None of the leaves got cut. I just cut down to where the stem, the flower stem met the leaf. And now I'm gonna take the time to shape the plant. Perfect time of year. I see green or gray leaves emerging from the base of these stems. So I can shape it, I can pinch it back, I can make it smaller if I want. And that's what I'm doing. And so the before, wider, see this tall stem, these guys were kind of outside and this was a little bit loose, and I'm gonna make it tighter, right? So that's what happens this time of year. Cool, so there's a few pictures. Oh man, should I just freestyle the rest of my thing, or should I try? Can you see that, Bridget?
The screen just went gray, so no.
I love it. Yeah,
We're also at the hour mark, just FYI.
Okay, cool. Your screen is being paused. This is awesome. Is that good?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, thanks for the update, Bridget. Oh man, how do I move my screen up? I don't know what's going on, dude. Okay, let me see.
It looked it was looking good on our end, but you stopped sharing.
Yeah, I couldn't advance it.
Oh, I see.
Let's see. Oh, there we go. Cool. So let me cover the basics of how to plant a native plant. This sounds stupid, but I think a lot of people make the mistake of not planting correctly, and it holds you back. It's just like a good start to your childhood, right? If you have a very traumatic childhood, this is not, I mean, I make a lot of jokes, but it's true. Plants are a lot like people. If you don't plant that plant correctly, it's hard to get it established, right? So I'm gonna give you tips. Here's what a lot of us do in the landscape industry. Tree of Life Nursery, Greg Rubin, a lot of folks who have planted hundreds, if not close to thousands now of landscapes. The smaller the plant, the smaller the pot that you can install, the better, right? That just like my mom's foot. Here we go, Bridget, my mom's foot again. Like the small pots, we're talking 4 or 5 foot tall, 4 or 5 inch tall quarts, or even the 1 gallon pots. Those plants usually have not been in pots for more than a year. So they haven't had a chance to remember the pot. When you put it in the ground, they usually break out really quick and they get established. They get their roots deep. Cool. The big 5 gallon pots, the big 15 gallon pots, they might look sexier, they might be bigger and fuller, but they've usually been in pots for 2 or 3 years. And a lot of times it's hard for them to forget that root ball. It's hard to forget them being in a pot, and they can take 1, 2, or 3 years to actually break out and even move sometimes. I've seen 5 gallon plants a year or 2 later, you pull them up. How come this isn't moving? And there's no roots. It's stuck in its soil ball, right? So the younger, the smaller, the better. Please, when you buy your plants or you get your plants, plant them within 2 weeks of buying them. If not, don't buy them, because they're so hard to keep alive. Why would you spend your money and then just keep them somewhere, and then like 2 months later, half of them are dead because you over or underwatered? Plant them immediately, the day you buy them if you can. When you dig your hole, you're gonna put water in the hole if it hasn't rained, right? Which is like 364 days out of the year. So basically water the hole that you're planting in. Fill it up once or twice, depending on how clay your soil is. Get some water under the pot before you even plant. And then you want to make sure, this sounds stupid, but I've seen this happen many, many times. Water your plant before you plant it. You don't want to plant a dry plant. That would be like not eating or drinking water before a marathon, right? This plant is going into the ground. It's going to hit the ground and it's about to spread. And you can't, it's very hard to water a plant once it's in the ground. You can water the soil, right? You can water the earth. It's really hard to water that plant that you just planted, right? So water it before you plant. When you take your plant out, don't break up the root ball. Just plant it as is. There's a few plants that you definitely should break up the root ball too, and there's some that you shouldn't. But I don't think it makes that big a difference. I would rather you not make the mistake of breaking up the root ball on the wrong plant. So just plant it. When you dig your hole, put your pot and dig twice as wide as your pot. And then just as deep as your pot. Don't dig deeper. Dig it just as deep as your pot. You put your plant in the middle and you repack your soil tight. You get your soil tight. If you guys have ever dug a hole in our earth, in our ground, it takes a while. It takes force to dig a hole. And that's because the soil is compact. And that's a good thing. You need to compact the soil back. I've seen too many people, when they plant, make it loose. And that's a ton of air. And air equals dehydrating of the water, and air equals burning of roots that are trying to grow. So pack it down. It's probably hard to pack it down as hard as the soil was before you dug it, but you want to get it tight so that as little air comes in and as little water escapes as possible from what you're putting in. Like to make a little berm or a little moat to kind of imagine like a collar around the plant to catch the water. And here's the secret. When I first started, I thought this was BS, and it took me a while to buy into this. And when I started getting plants established with 2 or 3 waterings their whole first year, then I knew I had something, and this was a very good idea from other people. I came from farms, right? In farms, you lay out drip irrigation and you water for 10 minutes every day, and you never get the water deep. The first time you water, try to give your plant 2 to 5 gallons of water the first time. I know it sounds like a lot of water, but it works. What it does is it gets water under the plant, and that's where we need the water. We need the water under the plant, under the root ball, so that once it starts to grow, it has a wet soil to grow into. Guess what? Roots don't want to grow into where it's dry, unless you have like an air plant. So get the water under the plant. That's very easy as long as you're on flat surface and you can create a berm, right? It's very easy to get 2 to 5 gallons. So how do you water your new plant during the winter? You guys want to plant during the winter. November to March is the best time to plant. So 2 to 5 gallons. I like to use this Dram Redhead. This is a breaker at the end of a hose. It makes the shower very soft. 2 to 5 gallons the first time, and then you wait 7 to 14 days. And your goal is to apply 2 to 5 gallons the second time. After that, you've watered twice and you've applied hopefully 4 to 10 gallons to your plant. And now you're in winter because you planted November, December, January, or you're in early spring, and you've gotten through probably a month of 2 waterings, and the plant is packed in tight. It has water under it, and now you're ready to water usually about every 2 weeks, unless there's rain. Whenever we water our new plants to get them established, we want to water deeper for longer is better than watering just a little bit and then every 2 days. We hate watering every 2 days, just a little bit. I want you guys to focus on every 10 to 14 days, a lot of it. Here's a video from Tree of Life Nursery. I think I'm gonna skip this just so that we can get to other stuff, but this is online from Tree of Life. I know Mike Evans, he's a really cool dude. Tree of Life Nursery is the biggest native plant nursery in California. This is a great video on how to do your first watering. Mike does 2, you can see right here, Mike does 2, here we go. He does 2 moats or 2 rings. There's the first ring. And then he does a cool outer second ring. And the idea is that this water gets under, and it's really cool. It's just so much work. And if you're planting plants next to each other, closer than this, like it's a little hard to do, but it's a great video series. There's 4 parts to it: how to plant, how to water. I recommend them. Let's move on. Oh, son of a.
All right, thank you very much for hanging in there and watching the entire video.
No, I'm not hanging in there, Mike. I love you, but I'm just gonna stop now. Okay, can you? Son of a chavela. Okay, we good? Yes, there we go. I did it. My mom is smiling at me right now. She's probably just laughing. She's all pendejo. How to care for your plant the first year. Your plant has been installed. Great. November, December, January. Finally, thank you. You planted a small plant. You watered it 2 to 5 gallons the first 2 times. You are now watering your plant every 2 to 3 weeks, and you're aiming to water it deeply instead of shallowly. After 3 to 5 months, your small perennials like that Penstemon Margarita Bop, your Salvia Apiana, your white sage, your Encilla californica, your California buckwheat, all those smaller plants that I showed you are now established. They have been through one rainy season, and that is excellent. Now what we're going to try to do is we're trying to give them a little bit of water during the summer so they don't go completely brown, right? And what we found is every 10 to 14 days during the dry season, what I call the dry season depends year to year, but it's usually April or May to November. We're aiming to give our plants water every 10 to 14 days, right? And what we're trying to do is replicate a light summer rain, maybe like, well, they're not light when they're in Vegas, but what you might find in Vegas, it just happens real quick, not the monsoons, but one of these light rains that washes the dust off the plants, that makes the soil moist. You can smell the leaves again. That's what we're replicating for. We're actually not trying to water our plants to get them established during the summer. We're just trying to give them a little bit of a boost, right? If you guys don't believe me, let's look at the rain totals for, this is downtown LA, 1877 through 2008. So there's three types of rain. Yes.
You're not sharing your screen if we should be looking at your slides.
Yep. Antonio is amazing.
You are.
And oh God, this is, I hope somebody's laughing because my mom's probably laughing. Okay.
The comments are very supportive. Maggie said, you're doing great. Zoom is hard and confusing.
Maggie, I don't appreciate your condescending tone. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you. This son of a biscuit. What am I doing? I don't even know what I'm pointing at. Somebody tell me what I'm doing. How do I share my screen? Okay. Oh, here it is. Stop share. Share screen. Oh my God. I wish, I mean, I always wish my mom was alive, but I wish she was alive right now to see this, because this would be hilarious. We would have like 6 margaritas during the talk and then después también just to laugh. Okay, so here's the rain totals. I'm going to start talking faster because I should have already shared this. There's La Niña, El Niño, El Primo, La Prima, El Tío. There's all these years, but we're going to look at La Niña, El Niño, whatever. Let's look at November through March and April. That's when all of our rain comes, right? For the most part, that's our rain. Look at June, look at July, look at August. Why are we watering these times? Our plants, our oak woodlands, our coastal sage scrub, our chaparral plants, thousands of years do not know what it is to get water these times of years. Why are we forcing water on them? Let's establish our plants November through March. That's the best time. And let's give them a treat. That's how I like to think of it, June to September. Cool? And so this is my mindset when I'm gardening. Ishi, I'm going to tell the story quickly of Ishi. Ishi was supposedly, and how insulting this is, the last wild Indian from his tribe. The rest of his tribe had gotten killed. This is out by Mount Lassen in the early 1900s. Ishi was sick. He got taken to San Francisco. There was an anthropologist that worked with him and was able to become friends with Ishi. Long story short, the anthropologist fell in love with them for probably various reasons, but he saw that this was one of the last, I don't have a better word for it, but untouched native folks in California. And so he developed a friendship with Ishi, and he asked Ishi to go back to his homeland with him. And he wanted to see how Ishi's people lived, right? He wanted to see what they ate, the tools they had, probably songs, probably lots of stuff, right? But the key is for the story is that when Ishi got back home, he knew what to do, right? He knew, okay, this is the creek. This is where we get water. This is the oak. This oak is better than this oak, right? Black oak is tastier than Quercus agrifolia. We know that mugwort does this when you get poison oak. He knew all these things because he was from there, right? And you can only do those things when you're from there. You can only have that for decades, if not centuries, and probably hundreds, if not thousands of years of passing down this information. What the hell does this have to do with plants? I want you guys to think of your plants as Ishi. When you put them in your landscape, they're going back home. They know what to do. This doesn't include redwoods, right? Because redwoods they're from a coastal foggy area with 50 inches of rain. So we're talking about Southern California, Riverside, Claremont, Pomona, Oxnard. When you put your plants in the ground, a coastal sage scrub, an oak woodland plant, they're home. And so that anthropologist did not need to give Ishi a credit card and go, dude, you should probably get some stuff from Walmart. He did not need to give him clothes, right? It's a little bit not true because this is all accomplished with multiple people, right? In a group, in a tribe. It's very hard to do it on your own. But the point is that Ishi's people knew what to do and they knew how to sustain on that land. Your plants know how to sustain. As long as they've made it through a rainy year, you planted them correctly, you've given them deep water, they know what to do. And so now I want you to pretend that you're the anthropologist and Ishi's at his home and you come visit him once a month and you bring pizza and beer and Ishi loves it. He adores it. He can't wait till you come again. Ishi, I'm going to come July 1st. I'm going to bring some beer and pizza. You down? Cool. Let's do it. You guys kick it. You watch whatever, Netflix, if they have it out there. You come back August 1st. Cool. There's a very, very small chance that Ishi's going to get any disease, as far as diabetes, as far as being overweight, from you coming once a month. But if you start to come every day with cheese, with beer, with bread, stuff that Ishi's not used to, he's probably going to freak out, right? And we know this, we know that folks, tons of different backgrounds, when they get introduced to what we call European diet, it can, by the side of diabetes, they can get a lot of different diseases. My point is, we don't need to bring food or beer to our plants except as a treat. And so our summer water, I want to encourage you, is a treat. Our fertilizer is a treat. Our pruning is a treat. We want to come with water every 10 to 14 days during the summer. They don't need it. Ishi doesn't need your damn pizza, but he loves it every now and then, right? He doesn't need your beer, but he wouldn't mind it once a month. So I would like for you to think of your white sage as Ishi. I would like for you to think of your Penstemon heterophyllus as Ishi. I made it through winter. I'm good. Oh, you're coming at me once a month, twice a month with this? I love it. You're coming with me with drip every 2 days. I hate it and I can't take it. And I'll probably be dead in 2 years, right? So I will expand more in a little bit on this as I get just a little bit more into maintenance. But I want to talk about soils for a second. I go more into soils in the advanced maintenance class, but here's all you need to know, right? I've been involved with hundreds of gardens. Soils are very, very rarely are soils important with native plants. And the reason is because we aren't watering that much. Clay soil is bad. If you're growing tomatoes and lettuce and it's thick and you have a car that runs it over every day and it's compacted, and you plant lettuce and you put a drip system on it and you water every day. Clay soil is horrible because it holds on to water, doesn't let the roots breathe, and you can kill stuff really quick. And that's why we add compost and we try to get all this tilth and aeration into garden beds because we're gonna water the heck out of them. Native plants, we're not trying to water that much. And clay soils are actually really, really awesome for a lot of native plants, even though a lot of them don't grow in clay soils. The problem is people overwatering clay soils, right? We don't need to have a problem as long as you don't water them. So I want to encourage you guys to embrace your clay soil, to not be scared of your clay soil. And when you see a plant that says only good drainage, I have a question for you. And I know from my life, and I know from stuff that I've worked with, that this is the answer. So why am I going to ask you a question? I'm just going to say it. What was the question? I don't even know. So my point is, there's not a problem if you don't water it. And the best analogy I have is black widows. Black widows are everywhere. If you go open a closet or like if you go pick up a pile of wood, they're everywhere. When's the last time you heard of somebody dying from a black widow? Probably never, right? Black widows are there for a reason. They're eating insects, they're doing cool stuff, they make really cool tattoos, etc. The black widows are only a problem if you lift up the log every day and touch them and poke them and ask them to bite you. If you lift the log up and you see a black widow, they usually run away. They don't mess with you. They're not stupid. That's how our clay soils are. This is a bad analogy. Our clay soils are like black widows. Don't touch them. Water them only when necessary and you're good. And in fact, they usually reward you because clay soils have a lot more nutrients than our rocky and sandy soils. So we see plants get big a lot faster, a lot happier in these clay soils. Hopefully I made myself clear. I'm going to get into plant flexibility. There's a few different ways plants can be flexible. And this is kind of like yoga, right? For this talk, our plants that are flexible are young plants. Young plants are very, very flexible. Like kids, a baby could fall off like a little bed, like a 2-year-old could fall off a bed and they're fine usually, right? They don't get hurt. where an adult could fall off the same size area compared to their body as a baby did and probably just break everything. Young plants tend to be very flexible. Another type of plant that's flexible is a plant that you do not let go dormant, just like that hummingbird sage I said at Rancho, that they're overhead watering every 10, maybe 14 days. They didn't let it go dormant, and so it's still flexible, right? It's still actively growing. Plants that are growing from November to April, like that sage that's breaking all those buds, that's a very flexible plant this time of year, right? Maybe not during summer when it's dormant, but now that it's actively growing, I have a flexible plant and I can do some maintenance to it. If we have a plant from a wide ranging area, like I was showing you those maps and plants that are up and down, Fresno, Sacramento, San Diego, if we have a plant like that, those plants are usually very, very flexible and easy to maintain in the landscape. And they tend to be forgiving in the landscape. This is giant coreopsis. In a pot, it's pretty flexible. In the ground, this thing is so easy to kill with water. It goes dormant. I have not found a way to keep this from going dormant. I've seen it stay evergreen for longer than it would in the wild, but usually if it gets water during the summer, eventually it'll just rot out. It wants to go dormant. This has very little flexibility in the summer when it wants to go dormant. The best time, the most flexible time for this plant is now when it's breaking dormancy. Cool. And so we can look at all these maps and we can get an idea of what's flexible, right? And so this is a map from CalFlora. I encourage you guys to check out that website. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but this is where coast live oak occurs in California. And then I'm going to ask you guys a question real quick. Which one, and don't answer, please. Black sage is one of these, right? The blue dots is where black sage occurs. And we know in the landscape, black sage takes full sun. It is also one of our most shade tolerant sages. It's probably the only sage besides hummingbird sage that I would use under an oak tree. It's very adaptable. It could take Ojai, San Bernardino sun, and then under oaks. And then another of these is Death Valley sage, which is one of the hardest plants to grow in Southern California because Southern California is just not, it's easy to, it gets too much water the wrong time of year, clay soils, etc. So hopefully it's obvious which map is black sage and which map is Death Valley sage. That should give you an idea of a plant that is used to a very specific environment, and that's Death Valley. So that's on the right. And then a plant that's used to a wide range, right? San Jose, Santa Cruz, 25, 30 inches of rain a year, down to Baja, which can be 10 or 12 inches of rain a year. I like those plants. They're usually very easy to maintain. These plants can be cut almost any time of year, and they're very flexible almost all year. California buckwheat, I showed you guys some pictures of pruning that. And there's the map. Tehachapi buckwheat, not easy to grow, not easy to maintain, and it corresponds with where you find it. It's found in like 1 or 2 spots. That's rough. I want to encourage you guys to be a little adventurous too, because Conejo buckwheat was found probably like a mile or 2 from where I'm giving this talk, and it's only found here wildly in the world. It's always on volcanic rock, on perfect drainage, growing sideways. You never see standing water on it ever. It's never in clay. But I can grow in my kid's school garden in clay soil, no problem. The way I do it is we put it on a little mound, 1 foot high mound. So whenever it rains, the water washes right off. And guess how many times a year I water it? 2 to 3 times a year at the most. Ishi, are you down for pizza July 1st? Yes. What about August 1st? Yes. September 1st? Yes. Dude, enjoy the rains in November and we're good. I'm coming back in July. Do you feel me? CNC Music Factory. Yes. Okay. So I use this data for a lot of stuff, but I like to use it for pruning, right? This helps me when I see that they're widespread plants. It's usually very, very easy to prune. I can prune it almost anytime. This is the distribution for coffeeberry or frangula or rhamnus. And let's see what we can do with coffeeberry. I've seen coffeeberry hedged at a 3-foot ball by upland, it's 100 degrees plus during the summer. I've seen it in part shade, getting 8 to 10 feet tall. Very easy to maintain, easy to grow, flexible plant, right? Adaptable, flexible. Coyote bush. This is a ground cover coyote bush, but the other coyote bushes are the same. You can mow this, you can cut it, very flexible. We can cut this and prune this fairly hard if we need to. It will bend back and it will respond to the cutting. Toyon, very easy plant, very flexible plant. This plant I've seen up in a cylinder shape, so very narrow and about 6 feet tall, right? And if you've seen them in the wild, they can get 20 or 25 feet tall, but we can keep it at a 6 foot tall, very not wide, less wide than tall, and it's beautiful. Flexible, saltbush, flexible, found all over California. Easy to prune, easy to shear. You can cut half of it pretty much whenever you want, and it responds really, really well. Mountain mahogany, same thing, very flexible, very adaptable, very open to pruning. Hollyleaf cherry and the island cherry, very flexible, very prunable, very adaptable. We can cut this, we can snip it. If I want to move 5 feet from it here, 5 feet from there, all good. Sambucus mexicana, Mexican elderberry, everywhere, found everywhere, very adaptable, clay soil. We can prune it, we can overwater it with drip, etc. Bladder pod, same thing, found everywhere, super easy to maintain. I can, if it's looking ratty in October, I can cut it down to a ball. I can cut it down to a ball in March. It's super, super easy to grow, super easy to maintain. So that's my little spiel on flexible plants. And so we have gardens now that are 2 or 3 years old, or maybe even a year old. What is wrong with my garden? How come my neighbors don't come over no more? It's COVID, so they shouldn't be coming over anyways. But why does my garden look bare, vacant? Maybe you didn't follow the rule of 75% green and 25% perennial or flowering stuff. I got this idea. I first heard this idea from Greg Rubin, but a lot of drought tolerant landscapers use this idea. When you do your garden, you want 50 to 75% stuff that's green all year. And if we look on this picture, this is a manzanita. This is green all year. There is never a day that this plant doesn't look good. It doesn't go dormant. It's green all year. When it flowers, it's a bonus. It's just a nice looking plant. This is monkey flower. There is about 6 months out of the year where these guys look ragged. They are rough. And so if you have a garden that is 75% monkey flower, 25% manzanita, you're going to see this and you will not see this. So if it's looking too wild, if it's looking too brown, you may want to switch your ratio and go for more evergreen stuff and less flowering semi-deciduous stuff. And a lot of times we picked plants that flower just in the spring. We got penstemons, we got hummingbird sages, and we forgot to get fuchsias that flower, or goldenrod or whatever that flowers in the fall. So that's sometimes people will be out in their garden in July, August, be like, oh, there's nothing here. What else could be wrong with your design? What else could be wrong with your garden? There may be plants that you planted too many of, like that monkey flower that just look horrible. Or you planted just one and they look a lot better with multiples, right? Some stuff you just need to replace. If you have we'll do it with lavender all the time and with sages. I hate to talk about replacing plants, but it's just the truth in our landscapes. If you think your plant's too woody and it's hard to prune and it just won't respond to pruning anymore, maybe it's time to replace it. You can take cuttings of it, grow it by clone, but sometimes there's just nothing to do but replace a plant. A few times we need to wait. There's some slow plants, so there is a chance that you just need to wait for your plant. And sometimes we'll see after a year your plant's not moving, and we can just tip it. We can just cut an inch or two off the end, almost like if you had long hair and you're cutting the split ends, right, to get some new growth. That's how you would do tipping on a plant. You just want to break it from maybe it being asleep, maybe it was used to the pot for too long. Usually a little tip pruning helps out. And then sometimes there's nothing to do. There's just nothing to do with this coreopsis besides rake a little bit of these dead leaves off and just leave it, because that's, hopefully you didn't plant 30 of these in front of your house. And if you did, that's a cool house actually. But so if you're doing natives in containers, remember they're always going to need water and fertilizer, and you really can't call them native anymore. They're just in a pot. They might be native to California, but they're always going to need water. They're always going to need fertilizer. They're not drought tolerant. And so I have a few tips that I like to go over for the first time you plant, and the first year, the first 2 years, what you're thinking of, right? I want to look at CalFlora for the website to see how adaptable, how flexible something is. I'm not afraid of black widows. This is so stupid. I'm not afraid of clay soil. Don't be scared of these nursery labels that say it needs good drainage, it needs perfect drainage. Well, if you're not messing with the black widows, then you don't really need to worry about it. The one time we will worry about clay soil is if we do have a super wet year, right? 25, 30 inches of rain, which we will get sometimes. We do see a lot of desert plants, white sage plants, things like that. They can go down. There's just nothing to do about it. We can't control the rain, right? But for the most part, we can control the irrigation that we put on, and that's way more important. I like to think about my plants as ishi. I'm putting them home, and I'm just going to bring them gifts every now and then, and they should be fine as long as they're from that area. I want to water during the winter. If we haven't seen any water, any rain, we need to be watering. So November, December, basically January at this point, we've only had one good watering, one good rain. We've had about an inch of rain here where I live or where I work. And so we had to have been putting water on our plants, right? If not, the plants are stuck in this drought cycle. It's really bad, especially for young plants. I want to encourage you guys to plant to plant small plants in pots instead of these huge, expensive plants. The first 2 times you water, I would like for you to give the plant 2 to 5 gallons. When you design, I would like to see 50 to 75% evergreen if you think your garden's too ratty, right? If not, it's all good. I would like for you to look up on the internet or your books more than one source of information, because sometimes you may be hearing stuff from Northern California or from Phoenix, right? Some people use our plants in Phoenix, so you may be getting a story that might be different from where you live, right? November through March is the most important time for pruning, for landscaping, for planting. And that's when you should, if you go to Mexico every December, you should cancel that trip and just do work. You are here doing installations, you're doing planting, you're doing pruning, you're shaping, etc. For beginners, there's a lot of plants out there that I wouldn't recommend. Dudleas, monkey flowers, Matilla poppies, woolly blue curls, island bush poppies. There's so many plants. Usually they're expensive, not all the time, that are really, they're not that hard, but if you don't follow the rules, they can be hard. So I would encourage you to not use those. The way that I approach fertilizing, this is number 11, the way I would approach fertilizing of native plants is most of our native plants do not need fertilizer. But when I cut back that California sunflower like we just did, the only time a California sunflower would ever get cut like that in the wild is either in a fire or like a deer runs it over, or like the squirrel's just like hungry as hell. I don't think squirrels eat silly, but it doesn't happen that often. And if we're here doing it every year or every 2 years, we want to give something back to the plant. And so what I recommend, and this is just mirroring what lavender farms do, some olive orchards, and what some grape orchards, grape vineyards do, is we want to side dress with compost. And compost is not really a fertilizer. It's more of like a multivitamin, or doesn't have a lot of like strength to it. And what I mean by side dress is we want to put around the base of the plant, not at the neck of the plant, but around the base of a plant. And I encourage you guys even just to read maybe an article online, or there's probably some videos online about side dressing your plants. And all we're trying to do is move the mulch away from your plant. And we want to look at a 3-foot plant, not at the neck, but as the whole plant. So we want to apply compost to the entire 3 feet of the plant. And usually per shrub, 1 or 2 handfuls is more than enough. So we scrape the mulch back. We try to evenly distribute 2 handfuls or 1 handful of compost. You want to water it in because compost is best when it's wet, right? And the only time that I put compost is in the late winter when we're almost guaranteed rain, right? So January, February, March, that's kind of when we're either getting the most rain or we're watering the most to make sure they make it through the summer. And that is usually enough, more than enough, to have our plants that we've cut back hard, right? That we're always deadheading, make it through the summer, because we're asking more of them, right? We're cutting them hard. We're asking more flowers, and we should pay them back, right? If we're doing a manzanita that we never cut back, then we don't have to do anything with it. Stop worrying about spring. When you do your designs, it's easy to find spring flowers. It's hard to find summer and fall flowers. So I encourage you to find stuff that looks good those time of years. Desert plants are great for summer flowers. They usually flower in the summer after desert rains. And summer water, why are we giving Ishi more than 2 or 3 times a month? Our stuff, he's fine, right? Your plants are fine. 2 to 3 times a month is more than enough for well-sited, well-established native plants. And I like to think the goal when we're landscaping is 50% natives, no invasive plants, so no Mexican feathergrass. I like to use edible ceremonial, medicinal plants, plants important to your family, to your people, etc. So I think I'm running a little bit over time. It's 2:05. Like I said, this talk is available through PDF. I do want to get into a few more slides on maintenance. So if you guys hang on for just about 5 or 10 more minutes, I should be able to get through this. So winter. So let me go back to this last slide. This last slide, or this slide here, we'll cover more in the advanced maintenance class. Winter specific. So what do I do right now, right? So this is the best time to install your plants. This is the time that we divide our plants. A lot of people have been gardening for years, understand the concept of dividing. All we do for divisions is we're digging up a root ball, usually the size of a 1-gallon pot or a 5-gallon pot, depending on the size of your plant. And we're gonna split it in half. We're gonna divide it in half. We're gonna cut it either from the roots up or we're gonna cut from the top down. And we don't do this with all plants, but we do it with plants that we know we can split in half. Like an oak tree, you wouldn't be able to split in half. You could take a chainsaw and cut it, but both sides would be dead. What we can do here is we want to know what plants grow by rhizome, what plants grow in clumps, irises, heucheras, blue-eyed grass. There's a lot of plants, native and non-native, that grow this way, and it's very easy to divide them up, to dig them up and replant them into your garden this time of year. We're making a video. Jamie B just filmed a video this morning on dividing blue-eyed grass. So I would look on our Samo Fund YouTube page fairly soon, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, to see how to divide and replant blue-eyed grass. I can't express enough how important it is this time of year. Once your small shrubs, subshrubs, so 2 to 5 feet tall, they break dormancy, this is the time to prune them hard if you need to, right? Those sages, those buckwheats. This is the time, if you want to cut back hard on your fuchsias, on your mugworts, on your Matilla poppies. This is the time when we need to put more mulch. If you have gravel as mulch, you don't need to put it because the gravel's there almost forever. But if you have wood as mulch, and all mulch is just a cover for naked soil. And we like to cover naked soil because it helps keep the soil temperature down, it helps keep the weed out, it helps keep the water in, etc. This is when we add compost to our high-performing plants. Those are plants that we're cutting back hard, that we're watering all year, that we want flowers from, etc. And then winter watering. So, we're supposed to get about 10 to 15 inches of rain between November and April, November, March in Southern California. A lot of years we don't. These last like 10 years, we've had a lot of what we call drought years. So I want to encourage you guys to think November, when November shows up, is there rain? And if there isn't, we want to start watering. I think it's very important to start watering your plants to make up for the lack of rain, right? And then once you have plants that are established, we want to think about how often do we water during the dry season. And I've been talking about Ishi, and we only take water or we only take pizza out to them a few times a month. But how do I know this? I've talked to many people. I've run many landscapes. We just know from experience that this works. But a lot of times people want data, right? They want to know exactly how much. And I think the sad part is that it's very hard to get an exact answer as to how much to water, right? But the question to ask yourself during the dry season, so April, May, June, July, August, September, October, we're talking like 6 to 8 months. It's easy to look out your window and go, damn, those plants are suffering. And they don't look like they're suffering, but in your head, you're like, oh, don't they need water? Did you plant it properly? Did you plant a small pot? Did you plant it during the winter? And did you give it 2 to 5 gallons the first few waterings? And every time you watered after that, did you give it deep water? If so, then yes, it is established. We're in the dry season now. The second thing to ask, is it a correct species? And does it belong there, right? Is it a redwood? Then it's probably always going to need water. Is it a plant from like Vancouver? It's probably always going to need water. But as long as it's a locally type adaptable plant from here, we're good. So our aim for the irrigation is to act as Ishi's friend. Most of our plants, if we had to leave for a year, they would make it through the summer without us, right? That's the goal, is to make it without us, but they'll look happier and they'll flower more, they'll be brighter, etc., with some water, right? So there's 3 ways to water. We can hand water, we can do drip irrigation, and we can do overhead sprinklers. We'll get into calculations more in the advanced maintenance class. But most lawns, you might be surprised, taking all of California, most front lawns in California, if you take an average, are about 5,000 square feet. The front yard, the front lawn. And so what is 5,000 square feet? It's roughly the size of a basketball court. And so if you have a garden, a front garden, this is a lawn, right? This is not with native plants. I'm just trying to give you an idea. If you cut that in half, if you have half a basketball court, that's about 2,500 square feet, right? And whenever it rains 1 inch, you'd be surprised at how much water we get during that one rain. A half basketball court, right? Half court basketball for a 1 inch rain gets about 1,500 gallons of water, which is a tremendous amount, right? And that's why our plants look so healthy after these beautiful rains, because we just can't do anything with our irrigation systems to replicate that. It's almost impossible. So when you're hand watering, I want to encourage you guys to go, if you have a half court basketball, to go 15 minutes. And if you have a full court, to go 30 minutes. That's about 200 to 400 gallons of water. And what I'd like for you guys to do at this time, when you're watering like this, is to water, if you have a 3 foot wide plant, to water the 3 foot wide area of the plant. Don't just water the neck of the plant. Think of that plant and where its roots are at. Most of its roots are out away from the base, not at its base. So I like to give water directly right to that 3 or 4 foot area. And then if you guys remember that tree life video that I didn't play, but if you go back and look at it, there was a ring that Mike made around the plant. And that other ring is what we're trying to water. We're also trying to give water to that area because these plants have a lot of surface roots that we want to kind of wake up. We want to deliver a little bit of water to. So we spend about 15 minutes on a half court, 30 minutes on a full court basketball. With drip irrigation, it really depends on how your emitters are putting out water. You could have half a gallon emitters. You could have 5 gallon emitters. I've seen 10 gallon emitters. It really depends. And in the next class, I will actually do a formula for you guys that people use to figure out how to do farm irrigation, but it applies to low water irrigation too. Long story short, if you do a little bit of calculations with drip irrigation for low water plants, we can usually get away with running our systems every 7 to 10 days for about 15 to 30 minutes. Now that varies drastically, right? Drastically on the type of soil you have and the type of emitters you have. But it's very hard to get in trouble with that little water in clay soil, right? There's a few other things to notice here. The first time if you have a drip system, I've seen this happen way too many times. People plant, they don't water with the hose. And sometimes you just can't get a hose out there in these landscapes. They just set the drip system and they never water deeply with the hose. You really want to, if you guys see the second point, this might be the most important. When you install a native or low water plant and you stick it with just drip, the drip cannot get deep enough under the plant. Remember I was telling, let's get 2 to 5 gallons of water the first 2 plantings. So ideally you take water out there and you water by hand twice, and then you set the drip on, or you can set the drip on top of that already. But what that does is it guarantees you get water under. It's very hard for drip, especially in specific soils, to get the water under these plants. And you'll see, I've seen too many drip irrigation systems where the plants aren't moving. You pull them up and the water's not even getting halfway down the root ball, right? So give them water if you can by hand. The other big recommendation I can make for drip is we usually put the emitters right here, my little cursor, we usually put this emitter to give water right to the base or the neck of the plant. After a year, after that guy's established, we don't need to water the neck anymore. We need to water the root ball, right? So on a sage, like a white sage, a purple sage, I like to have 2 emitters, 1 on each side. And so we're, in theory, fairly evenly watering that root ball, right? So those are the 2 big tips I have for drip irrigation. Please try to water by hand the first 2 times. And then after a year, once they get established, pull away from the neck and water the root zone. And then overhead irrigation, the same thing. That on the next talk, I'll go over the formulas. But with MP rotators, these are the pop-up sprinklers that a lot of folks are using now. They're very efficient. They give water at a very slow rate. 30 to 60-minute cycles seems to be perfect for summer watering of native plants. If you guys have specific questions, we can try to handle them if anybody wants to stick around after. I have until about 3 o'clock today to stick around. So the basic idea for irrigation is you need to find a balance between no water and too much water. And 2 to 3 times a month during the dry season seems to be the sweet spot for us. We're not talking about riparian wetland plants like sycamores or redwoods, right? So yeah, I have right there every 10 to 20 days. I think 2 to 3 times a month is a good thing to focus on. So just one more thing on the physical maintenance of native plants. They break their dormancy now for the most part, and this is when we want to get out there. Fertilize, we want to prune hard if we need to. This is for all the small stuff, like all the hummingbird sages, the fuchsias that Jamie B cut back. If we're talking about big, so I don't think I need to cover this again because we did cover sages, but this is not even a sage. This is a lavender, but I basically consider lavender sages. So again, this is the part that's going to fall off of the plant. So that can come off anytime. On this lavender, if this was too woody, you'd want to wait till the winter till you saw this plant breaking dormancy down here. And if you see it, that's the time to cut it. Very, very easy. If there's no new growth, then you don't want to cut into it. And there's a chance that you may just need to replace that plant, or you're going to always have that woody look. The buckwheats, I showed you guys how to maintain that California buckwheat. This is, I think, giant buckwheat. And the same thing, we can cut these heads off whenever we want once they're dry. And that will reveal a beautiful, almost white sage looking plant. And that plant we can prune hard. During the winter, you'll go find beautiful nodes coming off the wood at this time of year. And that's when we can cut hard if we need to. Ceanothus is really easy to maintain, usually because we don't need to do much to it. If you guys need to make heavy cuts on ceanothus, you want to wait till after they flower. Ceanothus start flowering in February, but usually the peak is March and April. And right after that's the perfect time. And so I'm tucking hard cuts. That's about a third of the plant. If you want to shape it, if you want to groom it, that's the perfect time, right after it flowers and before it gets too hot, right? So after it flowers, usually March, April, and May. I do want to give you guys a warning about ceanothus. As they get older, you'll usually see them have a little bit of yellow leaves during the summer, June, July, August. And a lot of people will water when they see those yellow leaves, and they'll kill their plants because they think those plants are going dry. You will see the exact same thing happening in the wild with ceanothus. All it's doing is it's getting ready for the summer with no water. So it makes itself a little bit naked. It drops a little bit of its leaves. And in the wild, they're perfect. In our garden, we think that they're dry and we add water and we usually create humidity and the ceanothus die. So larger shrubs are fairly easy as long as they're flexible, right? So if you understand that you have a flexible larger shrub like toyon, elderberry, saltbush, mountain mahogany, these plants can be maintained fairly easily any time of year. We want to save the big cuts for after a plant flowers. And manzanitas, hopefully we don't need to do anything to manzanita. Let me go back to this. This is a manzanita. Hopefully you don't need to do anything to manzanita because it's so damn beautiful on their own. But if you need to do stuff to manzanita, again, after they flower, and if you're going to make big cuts, you don't want to leave open wounds on plants. So you want to wait till the dry season, but you want to do it before it gets too hot. So right after they flower, March, April, May, we usually don't have too many rains. It's a perfect time to shape your manzanita and to give it some structure if you need to. And then, so I got a few, I think I'm going over too much. So let me leave you guys with this. So February 19th is the next class where we're going to how to calculate irrigation. We'll go into pest management. And yeah, so we are giving away free plants. We have a list. We're a lot more organized this time. Some of you guys may have asked us for plants about 2 months ago, and it took us a while to get back to you, and I apologize for that. We did get back to everybody, but if you are still looking for plants, feel free to email me, and we'll respond tomorrow with the free list. This workshop is on a PDF, so Bridget will send it to you guys, when she gets around to it. And there's those YouTube videos. I encourage you guys to see the Tree of Life, how to plant videos. And I don't want to ask too much of Bridget, but Bridget, however much time you have, we can answer questions. Si no, there's my email, and I'd be happy to try to answer some of your guys' questions. You know, the more pictures, if you guys do email me and you have concerns or whatever, the more pictures you can send me. I always want to know, is it full sun? Where do you guys live? How long has the plant been in? You know, it was on drip and I didn't water it deep like you did, Antonio. So the more information you can give me when I'm giving you like a mini consultation, the better. So with that, I'm going to shut up and wake the 4 people that are still here up, and let's see what we got, Bridge. I'm so sorry that I stayed late. If you have to split, I completely understand.
Yeah, just a reminder, the PDF of these slides will be shared as well as the recording. So if you have to run now, we'll continue answer all these questions and then share the recording with you later. So one of the first questions was, several of my salvias are drooping on one side. Why is that and how can I fix it?
Yeah, so let's, so drooping during the spring and summer is like that midday wilt. And that usually happens, you'll see it happen like spinach and like leafy stuff, tomatoes. The tips of plants will wilt, right? But that's during the hot season, right? And it doesn't mean the plant needs water. It just means it's so damn hot and there's so much water in the leaves, etc. Why do I talk so much? So in the winter, that's concerning, because in the winter, it's probably more of a sign of either a pest, and part of the plant is weird, right? That's very weird to have part of the plant. So it makes me think there's either a drip emitter that's watering part of the plant too much, that part of the plant's broken. Sometimes it might just be a broken stem. But more likely than not, it's probably too much water this time of year, right? Because it's, believe it or not, even though it's warm right now, it's been cool for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So it's very easy to deliver water to your garden, to deliver too much, especially if you just have a drip system and you're just watering every 3 days. The water builds up, and now that plant might be choking, right? So I would encourage whoever answered that question, does any of those apply to you? And we could take the next question, Bridget.
Okay, great. So the next question's around white sage. There's a few questions here. So one is, can they grow from cuttings? And any tips that you can provide about the cuttings? How easy it is to grow white sage in containers? And then the last question is around seedlings, water maintenance tips to help them survive until they're ready to be planted in the spring.
Yeah, those are good questions. So you can grow white sage from cuttings. I don't think it's the easiest sage. If you want to start like practice, try black sage. The Cleveland sage hybrids like Allen Chickering and Willy Blue are really easy. Hummingbird sage is pretty easy. White sage is a little bit harder because the wood gets hollow in the middle. So if you go out to your white sage right now and you cut a big stem of it, you'll look, and the old wood is hollow. It looks like a straw. You could use that as a straw. It'd be a really nasty, tasty straw. And then the top, the new growth, if you cut it and it's skinny enough, less than a pencil, it's usually thick. It has all the fiber, whatever it is, in the plant still running through it. So they're a little bit harder because it's hard sometimes to find that fresh growth that we look for cuttings. It gets hollow really quick. So if you can find that fresh tip growth that's like 3 to 5 inches tall right now, that doesn't have a hole, doesn't look like straw in it, it's pretty easy. I like to stick my cuttings in perlite. You could do perlite and a little bit of peat moss. How to do cuttings is a whole description. What I would encourage you to do is to look online for 2. If you're really interested in doing cuttings, there's not any good resources for native plants, but here's what I found that are really good. Go online and YouTube, look for lavender cuttings, and that is usually, watch more than one, and that's usually a really good way to do the easy native plants. And then go online and look for protea growers, and there's a lot of backyard protea growers who they give all their information online. And proteas are South African plants that love fire. You have to do all these treatments with seeds, and the cuttings are really hard. They're really expensive. They're beautiful plants. And it's almost a completely different way of doing a cutting. So white sage is easy. as long as you provide the right material and all that stuff. So look up lavender, and that's how you do your white sage. If you're doing something harder like island bush poppy or something that we know is tougher, look up proteas. Either way, you're going to learn a lot from just those two things. Damn, I can talk. What was the second question? I already forgot the second question. Oh, pots. Yes. So in a pot, white sage can be hard in a pot because people water it too much. The best thing to do with your pots is to pick it up if you can, and you can tell how much water it has, right? It's like being a waiter. If you've ever been a waiter, you can pick up someone's cup and feel how much coffee they have in there, right? And so you don't want to give them more coffee when they have a full cup of coffee. You want to wait till they have a half full cup, fill it up. You also don't want to wait till it's empty to give them coffee, right? So that's how I think about watering. So if you can do that, they're very easy in pots. If that's too hard for you, then you want to make a light soil that makes it hard to mess up. And a light soil is three things. You can buy an expensive potting soil. That's one part. So you have an expensive potting soil. Then you have either pumice or sand or perlite. That's the other thing. So you have 1 part potting soil, 1 part sand, pumice, or perlite, and then 1 part peat moss or seed starting mix. And you mix those all like a recipe, and that makes a very nice, well-draining, fluffy soil that is very easy to grow stuff in, but it dries out kind of fast. And it's good. You want stuff to dry out kind of fast because usually we overwater white sage and it's hard to get the water out once you add it. So we want it to dry out, and then you can easily add water. And the last thing on seedlings is if you can transplant your seedlings up to the next, think of your seedlings like in grade levels. When they have a few sets of leaves, they're ready to move up to the next grade level. And so that would be a pot, like a 2 or a 3-inch pot. Let them root into that pot for 2 or 3 months, and then they might be ready to go into the ground or into a bigger pot, like a 1-gallon pot. And hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, there's a few questions here about animals and such. So like the rabbits and quails and whatnot that are in people's gardens.
They're amazing in empanadas. They're amazing in enchiladas. They're amazing in so many dishes. But I have a feeling that it's not a recipe question.
No. So the question is, should they cage the new plants to protect them from those animals? And then there's a second question about fertilizer. Can their poop be used as fertilizer?
Oh, that's such a good question. I love that. Cool. So yeah, if you're worried at all about animals, you should protect your plants because they're expensive. Like do the best you can to protect your plants. Gophers, you can protect with chicken wire. Right now at the National Park, we're using Volking, and I think we're having pretty good success with that. Vol, V-O-L-E, Volking, or just chicken wire, make your own cages. That's to protect the stuff below ground. Above ground, you definitely want to protect your stuff from rabbits. You can put, there's various things. You can put another chicken wire cage with bamboo stakes on it to create a barrier, almost like a little ring. You can put milk cartons around. There's various kind of do-it-yourself cheap options that you can look online to protect your plants. But the sad reality is if these animals are around and they like the plant, they're always going to eat the plant. So deer will always like soft ceanothus. Rabbits will always like grass, and grass tends to stay low, so they're always going to munch it. You know, if the best thing to do is to try to look for plants that they're not going to eat, right? And they tend to not like stuff that has a smell to it, and you might not smell it without rubbing it, but like bladderpod, mugwort, some of our sages, California sagebrush, some of these plants that have odors to them tend to be pretty good at repelling, not repelling, but the bunnies will taste it like, no, I'm good. The deers will be like, I'm good. But if you live in the wild and you're watering your plants, they know they're going to come around. Trust me. Yeah. I think there was another question there.
Around fertilizer?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I have used, no, I have not used animal poop before. I mean, I've used composted like steer manure, but I think what you would want to do is to break it down before you use it, because usually it's too hot, right? It's too strong. So if you can age it, If you can let it sit for a year or two, maybe you can add it in a compost pile with leaves and sticks and let it break down. It'll make really rich compost, probably fertilizer at that point. But I don't think I would add it straight onto your plants. It would probably get wet and probably be too strong and possibly burn your plants.
Is there a treat fertilizer that you recommend?
Tree fertilizer?
Treat.
Tree, árbol, ¿verdad? Like a tree. So
It's typed in as treat, like TREAT. Is there a treat fertilizer that you recommend?
I don't know what that means. I mean, I'm gonna treat myself to a fertilizer afterwards, and by that I mean a beer. But let me answer that two ways. If you're thinking of a tree fertilizer, I don't recommend fertilizers for native plants, right? Like, and a fertilizer is something that you look at the label and it has like a number, like 555. That's the strength. 10, 12, 10. Flower bloom, right? At the nursery we use it a little bit, but it's because they're not in the ground. But in your landscape, you shouldn't have to fertilize your native trees, right? Well-sited local trees should be fine. What you do need to fertilize is like fruit trees and other stuff that maybe not from Southern California that needs more water and flowers like crazy. Those probably do need fertilizer. I've been out of that game for so long. I wouldn't even want to come up with a recommendation. If you're talking about compost, like as a treat, right? Which maybe is what you were talking about.
Yeah, Lorena corrected it saying as in Ishi's beer and pizza treat.
Oh yeah. There's I forget the name of it's at Green Thumb Nursery in Ventura. There's again, I don't recommend doing this except once a year and only to specific plants, right? So if you have 10 plants in your garden, you have a manzanita, you have a ceanothus, those don't need it, right? If you have deer grass that you're not cutting back, that doesn't need it. If you have Penstemon Margarita Bop that you are cutting 3 times a year to get 3 blooms out of, and you pruned hard during the winter, that needs it. And so what I like to use is the worm castings. I forget the brand. It has this like little cartoon worm on it. And worm castings is basically like the poop composted of worms. It's kind of like compost. It's a little bit, it's not stronger, but we like it. It has a little bit more micronutrients than compost. So I like that brand. It can be fairly expensive. I think it's like 15, 20 bucks a bag. But again, you don't need to use much. And I would just use it this time of year, right? Compost is really only good when it's wet. And we really don't want you to water during the summer. So use it now when hopefully we get rains. You water it in and you should be good.
Okay. So it's 2:33. We can answer another question or close it out here. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I don't want to take your time, Bridget. I really appreciate that you're stepping in for Celeste. And then I want you to badmouth me to Celeste. Antonio started late. He couldn't even figure out how to share a video.
No.
And then like he kept messing up the screen. And then his mom was laughing at him. You should have said with his mom's like green toes. And it was just a disaster. So it's up to you, Bridget. If people know me, I'll stay around till my phone call. I think my phone call's at 3:30. But
okay, I think we answer another question before
let's do it.
How do I control or cut back the growth on plants that spread underground like hummingbird sage? I just have a few plants and they're already taking over my yard.
That's a really good question. So the good answer is to install a root barrier around the pot, around the plant when you plant them. That's too late for that, right? So it depends on what plant. You said hummingbird sage. I have really never seen hummingbird sage take over a garden. It does grow nicely. It does fill out a garden, but it never grows. I've never seen it grow so fast that it takes over a garden. So my answer for hummingbird sage is to just pull it out, to just yank it out, right? To just dig it out, to basically cut the plants out as you see them. Another thing that might be happening is you might have a mild climate. You might have very good soil. Like good, I mean like nutritious and maybe like loamy, not super clay. And you might be watering too much. And so they might be just taking off. We see that happen a lot in the coast where the climate's more mild and the plants just take off, right? As opposed to being in Riverside where it's more of a struggle. So you may need to cut back on water. We really see it with things like Matilla hot poppy, where they're just weeds and they take over. At that point, you just need to, at this time of year, because that's when they spread, is to just take a shovel and start digging them out and be aggressive about it. And you can usually, if you do it enough, beat back a plant to where you want it. Think of, if you've ever seen like certain trees, I'll take toyon for example. If you've ever seen toyon or certain trees that want to grow as bushes, they want to be dense bushes that you can't see through, but people have trained them to be naked at the bottom and then be like a lollipop at the top. That doesn't happen naturally. That happens from beating the plant back and just making it naked. Every time a stem wants to grow from the bottom, they cut it, they cut it, they cut it, and eventually they create it into what we call a lollipop looking tree, right? And toyon doesn't want to grow like that, but you can buy it like that. So you have to just be on top of them when they happen. And when you see them coming out, this is the time of year for like Matilla poppy and other invasive stuff. You could try, I guess you could try actually spraying. I know a lot of people like to use herbicides, but you could try spraying, but you want to be careful because a lot of that stuff is connected and I don't know how far some of that stuff would go. So just a root barrier when you first plant, reducing the amount of water, and then digging them up as soon as you see them.
And just quickly, the opposite, if someone wants the hummingbird sage to take over their garden, how can they do that quickly?
Yes, that's the better, I mean, not the better, that's, when it flowers, cut it back, cut the plant back, don't let it flower. Don't ever let it flower the first year. And I know that sucks because you're not gonna get flowers, but what you get instead is you get spreading underground. Every time you cut that back, the plant goes, oh, we'll try this again. So it spreads underground. And I can't tell you how much that trick works for me. I use it a lot for yarrow too. People will plant yarrow and it'll spike up and flower. They go, look how pretty my one plant is. And the rest of the year it stays there. It doesn't do anything. Instead of saying, look how pretty my one plant is, go, I hate this flower, cut it off, it's ugly. And send that plant back underground and let it form a carpet, right? So that's what you do with the young yarrows. And then this time of year, if you have a young yarrow and hummingbird sage, and this time of year, if you have a 2 or 3 year old one that you really want to spread, right now is the time of year to just cut it all back. You can even take a weed whacker to it, just whack it all to the ground, compost it, water the compost in, and watch it go nuts, right? Because what you're doing, it's by coming up right now, it's telling you it wants to grow. You're cutting it back and saying, get back and spread underground. Compost it to give it some juice, and then watch it take off.
Okay, this is the final last question.
Last one, Bridget. Here it is.
Do you know the best way to germinate California poppy seeds?
Oh, that's a good question. So California poppies are basically domesticated at this point. So if you bought them, or like somebody gave, I don't know if CNC gives stuff away, like I think tree people might. I don't have a problem with anybody giving away, but if you give away poppy seed, you usually bought it. And that stuff is basically domesticated. So what I would do just to make sure you get germination is to soak it overnight in warm water, just like you would beans, frijoles, like they're easier to cook overnight. Beans, because they've taken up water. So set them in warm water, not boiling water, warm water overnight, let them get fat and happy, and then sow them. If you collected them from the wild, then they can be a little hard to germinate. They usually sit dormant for years, right? And over those years, they usually have the weather and the wind starting to break the seed. The seed can be a little hard. So what I would do is, let's say you have 100 seed of wild collected or first generation, not domesticated poppy seeds. What I would do is take a small portion of it, like 25 or 50. So don't use all your seed. Put it in warm water and see how it germinates. Right, put in warm water, get rid of the warm water after 12 hours, sow them, and then see what happens. If you don't get anything, then it means you need to break the dormancy somewhere else, and you may need to hot water, put not boiling water, but you may need to boil water and then put the water on top of the poppy, or you may need to just lightly scarify or break the seed coat just a little bit. Usually that hot water trick works. 2 minutes in the hot water should be enough. But you know, if they have them for free, if they got them for free or they bought them from somewhere, they're probably domesticated. So just soaking them overnight should be enough.
All right. Thank you for this wealth of knowledge. I feel like we can really go on all day with all the information that you have.
Bridget, thank you.
So thank you again. You have
There's
more
20
classes.
There's still 26 people here. You guys are crazy.
You're full of great information, clearly.
I think they were just, they wanted to stay here to see if I could figure out how to do a YouTube video on PowerPoint.
But yeah, there was a lot of great questions, and so maybe we can send you some more that weren't answered. Sorry, not all your questions were answered, but we've been here for 2 hours and I have to run to another meeting, so sorry about that. But again, we will send the PDF of all these slides to you via email. We'll share this recording on the CNC website. And then I'll talk with Antonio about some of these remaining questions and how maybe we can get those answers to you.
Yeah, maybe if it's not too much work, Bridget, if you want to pull all those questions, I can answer them real quick. And when you send out the PDF, you can throw them all. I'm looking at some of them right now. Some of them aren't that hard. They're pretty basic. So
okay, yeah.
It's up to you. However much time you have, Bridget. I don't want to put too much work on you, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, I have to run, but I will get these questions to you so that everyone can get the answers as well.
It's on. Thank you guys. Hopefully you didn't fall
Thank
asleep.
you all. Stay tuned. If you want to see more Training Institute courses like this, we post them on our social media pages. So make sure you follow us. Follow Samuel Fund for their updates and all of Antonio's good info. They share it there too. So thank you for joining us today. Have a great weekend.
Abrazo, Bridget. We'll see you soon, okay? Take care. Thank you.